For centuries, a maritime force represented the pride of nations, the ability to project force outside of their homeland and throughout the globe. For many nations, a naval force was necessary to maintain sovereignty and defend their interests around the world. As such, there has always been a desire to develop new technology that would allow a force to overpower any foe they might encounter. This desire has seen the creation of some amazing feats of engineering. Steam-powered ships, battleships, aircraft carriers, for example. With this everlasting desire to develop new technology, exists another yearning for naval commanders around the world: the mastering of all elements of naval warfare, on the surface, in the air, and under the surface. While the aircraft carrier's development within the past 100 years has allowed naval commanders to conquer the skies, one piece of technology has been around for far longer and has given humanity the ability to conquer the depths: the submarine. In this video, we'll be taking a look at a design that sought to combine both the aerial power with the stealth of a submarine. Today, we take a look at the Japanese I-400, brought to you by World of Warships.
Throughout history, there have been countless tanks, all designed to kill. But not all have been a success. What happened to the ones that never made it? And why did they fail? My name is Konavark. Join me as we journey through time, uncovering failed projects and forgotten creations in Cursed by Design.
If you clicked on this video, then you more than likely have a special interest in warships. If that's the case, then today's sponsor, World of Warships, is perfect for you. In World of Warships, you can take control of over 400 historical ships such as the Bismarck and Yamato, and the best part is, it's free to play. I recently did some streams of the game over on my Twitch, and I had a really great time. I thoroughly enjoyed playing the French battleships, and it's what inspired me to do this video talking about a warship. So if you want to take control of battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and aircraft carriers, pause the video right now and click the link at the top of the description. Once you do that, use the code BOOM to get an exclusive bonus pack just for my viewers. Inside, you will receive 200 doubloons, 2.5 million credits, 7 days of premium time, and 2 ships, the St. Louis and the Premium Emden. Then, once you've got the game set to download, come back to the video and we can talk about the strangest submarine ever conceived. Over the course of modern naval warfare, the submarine has been one of the most technologically advanced machines employed by worldwide navies. The ability to sneak past your enemy without them having the slightest idea of your presence has made these vessels a form of real-life superweapon. Many early submarines were designed with the purpose of sabotaging enemy fleets through the placing of mines on their hulls, like the American Turtle, with others being designed to use torpedoes to sink enemy ships. In fact, the first recorded submarine to sink an enemy ship was the H.L. Hunley in the American Civil War. Despite the potential displayed by submarines and the invested interest by many nations in them, they were not widely deployed until the early 20th century. However, with conflicts like the Great War ravaging both land and sea, many advancements in submersible technology as well as modifications to enhance their military value would begin to crop up around the globe, including the Land of the Rising Sun. It was April 1942, and just a few months prior, the Empire of Japan delivered the first strike that would begin the Second World War in the Pacific. As it is well known, the primary goal of the Japanese at Pearl Harbor was to decisively destroy the US Pacific Fleet stationed there, particularly their capital ships, such as battleships and aircraft carriers. While many ships were destroyed, the Japanese had failed to eliminate the American carriers and left the US Navy powerful tools at their disposal. While the Imperial Japanese Navy at the time was the third largest navy in the world, they were still numerically inferior to the US Navy. This had left its leadership to develop doctrines that required a quick victory over the United States in order to succeed in its goals in the Pacific, and this doctrine was seen in various projects, such as the construction of the Yamato-class super battleships. However, other ideas were thought up within the higher-ups of the IJN. One such idea was developed by the commander of the Japanese Combined Fleet, Admiral Yamamoto: underwater aircraft carriers. These carriers were devised with the goal of taking the war from the waters of the Western Pacific to the continental United States. It was hoped that if these ships were successful in their mission, then they would cause the United States to reduce its efforts in fighting the Japanese or end the war altogether. What would become the I-400 class was officially designated as the Sentoku-type submarine, which translates into Special Submarine. These ships were deserving of the name, being designed with a goal in mind that had not been implemented in previously designed aircraft-carrying submarines. Yamamoto envisioned that 18 of these ships would be produced, which would have created a true fleet of submarine aircraft carriers ready to deliver coordinated strikes on the American mainland. It was planned that this fleet would be able to have such a range that they could reach their targets by either the Pacific or through the Indian and Atlantic Oceans. To accomplish this, the size of the subs was massive. 400 feet, 122 meters long, with a 39-foot, 12-meter beam, and 23-foot, 7-meter draft, and a displacement of 5,223 tons on the surface. Compare this to the standard submarine of the US Navy, the Gato class, which was only 311 feet, 95 meters long, with a beam of 27 feet, 8.31 meters, and a surface displacement of 1,525 tons. Such a size allowed the ships to carry enough fuel to travel around the world 1.5 times, but this was not the only reason they were so large. On top of the massive hull was a huge watertight hangar that measured 102 feet 31 meters long and 11 feet 3.5 meters in diameter, made to house a main striking force of this machine, 3 Aichi M6A1 Seirin seaplane dive bombers. The M6A1s were armed with either a torpedo or nearly 1,800 pounds 850 kilograms of bombs. In true aircraft carrier fashion, the M6A1s were also launched from the deck through the use of an 85-foot, 26-meter steam catapult that took up the entirety of the forward deck of the ship. The crew was able to prepare and launch an M6A1 in 7 minutes, including the attachment of their floats and arming. Alternatively, the planes could be launched without floats and ditch when returning from their mission if there was not enough time for proper preparation. Interestingly enough, the submarine was supposed to remain underwater while the aircraft were on mission, and only surface again when the aircraft were either landed nearby or within the vicinity. The planes would then be retrieved and either rearmed or stored back into the ship to slip undetected back under the waters. As they were still submarines, the ship was also armed with 8 torpedo tubes, 1 140mm deck gun, and 4 25mm anti-aircraft autocannon mounts. 4 2,250 horsepower diesel engines propelled the ship at a top speed of nearly 19 knots on the surface and about 7 knots while submerged. A respectable speed for such a vessel. For comparison, the much smaller Gato class had a surface speed of 21 knots and 9 knots submerged. As expected with their massive size, the I-400s were not exactly dreams to sail. A design flaw of the submarine was that they were equipped with very small rudders, which made it extremely difficult to maneuver while surfaced. Another was related to the fact that the superstructure was not centered but rather offset to the port side, and this caused the ships to veer off course while traveling underwater, requiring the helmsman to steer slightly starboard at all times. Even worse was the interior of the ships, where the crew did not get air conditioning or running toilets. The ships may have been huge, but they still had cramped quarters for the crew. You can only imagine what it would have been like in the summer heat in one of those things. Unlike many other submarine classes at the time, the I-400 was unique in that it was equipped to remain invisible underwater, not invisible to the eye, but rather to enemy sonar. Documents of the inspection of the ships by the US Navy after the war show the discovery of a special coating that was applied to the entirety of the hull, which consisted of a mixture of materials stated by the Americans to be synthetic rubber, asphalt, or cement that would absorb or deflect sonar pulses and render the ship invisible to the enemy. Ultimately, it is unknown if this was effective or not, as no tests were conducted. Now that we know the design and reasoning behind these beasts, what would become of the design? Originally, Admiral Yamamoto envisioned a fleet of 18 submarine carriers to be constructed, and the IJN approved the construction of the boats, with construction beginning in January of 1943 with the lead ship I-400. Later that year, I-401, 402, and 403 would be laid down, and in 1944, I-404 was laid down. However, the war would result in a terrible event for the Japanese Navy, the death of Admiral Yamamoto himself in April of 1943, shot down after his flight plan had been decoded by American intelligence. It seems that with Yamamoto gone, the Navy no longer saw his vision of a fleet of massive underwater carriers, as the order was reduced from 18 to 9, then to 5, and eventually only 3 remained on order. I-400, I-401, and I-402 would be the only ships completed. In addition, 2 mini I-400s were built, the I-13 and I-14, which were essentially shrunken I-400s that could only carry 2 aircraft. The ultimate goal of the I-400s were always eccentric, focusing on long-distance missions that would see the ships travel the world towards their target in the United States. Some propositions saw potential attacks on Washington, D.C. or major cities on the West Coast such as San Francisco. Even more haunting was the planned Operation Cherry Blossoms at night, which would have been an attack using the submarines to strike Southern California with aircraft armed with bombs filled with fleas infected with plague pathogens developed by Unit 731 in September of 1945. With only 3 being completed in 1944 and 1945, they would never see such missions. Instead, all the carrier subs would be assigned to Submarine Squadron 1 and prepare for attacks on the Panama Canal to attempt to at least deliver a significant blow to the Americans. Once again, not even this mission would come to fruition. Japanese intelligence would uncover the plans by the Allied forces for an invasion of the homeland islands, and it was then realized that the war had finally reached the home front. On the 17th of August, 1945, 4 submarines of the Submarine Squadron 1 would be dispatched from mainland Japan to strike an American fleet assembled at Ulithi Atoll. 2 would be sent to Singapore, but I-400 and I-401 were tasked with Operation Arashi Storm that would see them launching all 6 of their Sirens for a kamikaze attack on whatever American carriers were gathered at Ulithi. It has been reported that the Sirens were painted in American livery, even painting American stars on the aircraft, but there are no pictures that confirm this. This attack never happened due to the surrender of Japan, and the crews of the I-400s were ordered to destroy every weapon on board, even the planes. Upon surrender of the ships, American crews have been reported to be shocked by the size of the ships. Especially astounded were the higher ranks and intelligence officers who never knew the true nature of these ships. All 3 captured submarines, I-400, 401, and 402, were extensively inspected by American teams. I'll leave a link to the American report on the I-400s in the description for any of you who may be curious. Unfortunately, the threat of Soviet inspection teams wishing to view the vessels resulted in the Americans scuttling all of the ships to prevent potential Soviet aircraft-carrying submarines from becoming a reality. In 2005 and 2013, I-401 and I-400 were discovered at depths over 2,300 feet, 700 to 820 meters, off the coast of Hawaii. In addition, 1 Siren remains today in the Smithsonian Museum in Ohio. While ultimately failing to achieve the dreams of Admiral Yamamoto of being the saviors of Japan by discouraging the United States from continuing the war, the I-400 class of submarines were and still remain marvels of engineering. These massive ships were the largest submarines in the world until the development of nuclear-powered ships, and still remain the only ships that can be truly called submersible aircraft carriers. While they could only carry 3 aircraft, these aircraft were not made for scouting, but for striking the enemy by surprise and disappearing before they even knew what happened. The legacy of the I-400 class remains to this day, as many continue to be fascinated with the idea of a massive submarine designed for aerial attacks on targets across the world. While not directly related, it could be said that aircraft carrier submarines have a descendant in the form of modern ballistic missile submarines who themselves are capable of striking targets around the world with world-ending firepower. Being failures or not, the I-400 class will remain in the minds of historians and history fans alike for years to come, whether it be due to their enormous size or their status as the only true submersible carrier. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed, and let me know if you'd like to see videos like this in the future. Be sure to check out World of Warships using that link in the description and use the code to get all that awesome free loot. Special thanks to Lord Captain Teapot for helping write this script so I could share this incredible project with you. Appearing on your screen now will be some links to a few of my other videos. Hopefully I'll see you there.